ECAD or ECOPHENE. So these are the concepts in ecology and evolutionary biology that describes how population of organisms can exhibit phenotypic variations due to environmental factors even when they share the same genetic background. So ECAD, it refers to the population of individuals that belong to the same genetic stock but display significant differences in their phenotypes, that is physical characteristics such as size, shape and leaf number. These differences arise as a response to environmental conditions rather than genetic mutations. The variations in ECADs or ecophenes are induced by environmental factors such as temperature, light, water availability, soil conditions. For example, a plant species may exhibit larger leaves in a moist environment but smaller, thicker leaves in a dry environment. And these changes are typically temporary or reversible. If the environmental conditions change, the ECAD or ecophene may revert to its original phenotype or develop new traits suitable for the new conditions. When a species is introduced to the new environment, its immediate response is to develop adaptations that enhance survival. This may involve physiological changes such as altered metabolic processes or structural modifications, for example, change in leaf size or thickness. These adaptations do not involve changes to the genetic code, means the underlying genetic makeup remains the same. The resulting variations are purely phenotypic, enabling the species to cope up with the new habitat. If two ecophenes remain in their respective habitats for too long, these morphological changes will start becoming permanent. Over generations, if environmental pressures persist, these adaptations may lead to genetic changes through natural selection, eventually resulting in speciation. An ecotype refers to the population within a species that has developed unique genetic traits as a response to particular environmental pressures. These genetic differences result in distinct phenotypic characteristics that enhance survival and reproduction in their specific habitats. Unlike ECADs, which exhibit reversible phenotypic variations due to environmental factors, ecotypes are genetically distinct populations, and the adaptations seen in ecotypes arise from genetic changes that enhance their fitness in specific environmental conditions. These adaptations can involve various traits such as morphology, that is physical structure, physiology, biochemical processes, behavior, reproductive strategies. In contrast to ECADs, adaptation in ecotypes are typically irreversible. Once a population has developed specific traits in response to its environment, these traits tend to persist even if the population is introduced to a neutral or different habitat. This permanence arises because the genetic changes that led to these adaptations become fixed in the population over generations. Ecotone, it is a transition zone between two diverse ecosystems where two communities meet and integrate. It can vary in width from a narrow strip to a broader area depending on the specific ecosystems involved. Ecotones often contain a mixture of species from both the adjoining ecosystems as well as unique species that are specifically adapted to the conditions of the ecotone itself. This leads to a higher level of biodiversity compared to the individual ecosystems. The convergence of different species in an ecotone can lead to increased interactions like competition, predation, symbiosis. These interactions can significantly influence community dynamics and ecological processes. Ecotones typically exhibit a gradient of environmental conditions like changes in soil type, moisture, light, and temperature. These gradients can create varying habitats that support different types of organisms. Example of ecotones: grassland as an ecotone. Grasslands can represent an ecotone between forest and desert. In this transition zone, you may find species that thrive both in forest and desert conditions, leading to a unique community of plants and animals that can adapt to varying moisture levels and temperatures. Then estuaries, it serves as a ecotones between freshwater and saltwater ecosystems. They are typically rich in nutrients and they support diverse species, including fish, birds, invertebrates. So in the image, you can see on the left side of the image, there is a dense deciduous forest with tall trees clearly representing one ecosystem. On the right side, there is an open grassland with no trees representing the second ecosystem. In the middle, you can see a transition zone where the trees become less dense and grasses start dominating. This zone marks the ecotone, the blending of two ecosystems. In the middle, you can observe species typically associated with both the ecosystems. For example, the trees from the forest are still present, but they are thinning out, they are decreasing in number. And the grazing deer, which are often seen in grassland habitats, appear in this transitional zone. So the grazing deer, which is often seen in the grassland habitats, it appear in this transitional zone, indicating the mixing of species from both the ecosystems. Then in the graph you can see below, in the lower part of the image, you can see a graph. It shows the population of forest species and the grassland species. In the ecotone, that is middle part, both the population overlap, illustrating the presence of species from both the forest and grassland ecosystem. This overlapping zone corresponds to the middle section of the image where the trees are thinning out, means decreasing, and the grassland species are becoming more visible. Ecocline is a zone of gradual but continuous change from one ecosystem to another when there is no sharp boundary between the two in terms of species composition. So the transition between ecosystem occurs gradually, with species composition changing incrementally rather than abruptly. This means as you move through the ecocline, you will encounter a series of species that may change in abundance and diversity over the distance. It occurs across the environmental gradient. That is, environmental gradient means gradual change in abiotic factors like altitude, temperature, salinity, etc. Now, the species composition in an ecocline, it may reflect varying adaptation to the changing environmental conditions. Like from the image, you can see as you move from left to right across the landscape, you can notice how the population of forest species like trees, forest animals, it is decreasing, while the population of grassland species like grasses, grazing animals is increasing. So this, the thing which you can understand from the graph is that there is a gradual change in the species composition. There is no sudden jump. The transition is continuous, illustrating the concept of an ecocline. So over here, the changes which take place, it is continuous, it is gradual. No abrupt changes take place.